Hey everybody, this is Fuji Billy. Today we're going to talk about DIY kits or projects that you can put together. These are a couple of hammocks I've done. I'm going to set these up real quick and we're going to talk about the pros and cons of building your own gear and kind of what to expect if you get into a project like this. Be right back. Okay, so there you can see both hammocks are set up now. It took me about 4.5, 5 minutes on each one, but I've set both of these hammocks up quite a few times, so there's no surprises or issues there. I've got a lot of experience with these two designs. So these are both hammocks, like I said, that I've built myself. I've used a lot of wisdom and experience from other people as I set these up, but I'm going to walk you through each one and kind of talk about how they're different from each other and how they're different from some of the others that you might come across. So the basic design that I used, this is my wife's hammock, and the basic design I used was actually developed by Jellyfish, and I'll put a link in the description to Jellyfish and her series of videos on how to build this kind of hammock. There are a few changes, a few adjustments that I made to what she did, but overall this is her harmony hammock, or perfect ratio, golden ratio hammock design. Now what I use for this, as far as fabric, all of the fabrics and netting that I use I get from Ripstop by the Roll from Kyle and his team. This is the venerable Robic material, which is very popular because it's comfortable, it's sturdy, it's strong, and it's a beautiful fabric as well. Real nice to sleep in. So this is the Robic. I think this is the 1.0 because my wife is very light, and you'll notice that this is a 2-level or a double layer hammock as they're called, and I'm going to walk you through some of that in here in a minute. But that's not necessary for her. I mean, she's very lightweight, so she doesn't need this. This is more for aesthetic reasons and to give us a couple of options that I'll talk about in a minute. But you'll notice that this is a zip-on bug net, what's called a jungle hammock, or a integrated bug net hammock. You see that it has a ridge line built into it. This is the standard bug netting. I think it's 1.0 ounce. You'll notice also that I've integrated a symmetric design. So there are two pullouts on each side, so you can pull this out either way, works just fine. This is the Robic XL, so it's a wider, I believe it's like a 65-inch or maybe a 67-inch wide fabric, which gives us a lot of good lay. I've used YKK number 3 zippers. You can use a number 5 if you feel like you need the extra sturdiness, but these have held up very well. I've got it on a couple of hammocks and never had an issue with it. Okay, so on each end of the hammock you're going to see that I've got an end cap, and that's from Jellyfish's design. It gives you a nice smoother transition because this bug net is not removable. It stays on the hammock. It zips off, and I'll demonstrate there here in a minute. It zips to one end, and you'll see here's the end that the zipper ends on. So you can zip it all the way around. So you can put the zipper, the entry or exit, on either end, but the net doesn't remove. It stays on the hammock. So when I develop mine, when I build my hammocks, you'll see that I use a sewn seam end on my hammock instead of the where the end just gathers up under it and then knots to it. I actually have it integrated. And you'll also notice that I don't use continuous loops. I have my whoopee slings that I build myself actually bound into the end seams of the hammock, and then you'll see I have the ridgeline dog bone, which is a non-adjustable dog bone standard ridgeline. I know the lengths I need to make them, and I put them to that. And then you'll see there's a mitten hook in here, and I'll show you what that's hooked to in just a minute. Whenever I build a hammock, I also use a double-ended stuff sack, and you'll notice just for fun, I always put a strip of material into the double-ended hammock that integrates or complements the interior fabric for the double layer hammocks. I love the whoopee slings. I love the way they work. I love how convenient they are and how easy they are to adjust. They're very sturdy. You'll see that for the tree straps I use Dutch's Dyneema tree straps. They're very light, very strong. They don't stretch. They don't loosen up in wet weather or anything. I've had really good luck. I've been in had these out in the rain for days on a camping trip. I mean, literally, it rained nonstop for days. Never had a problem with them. Never had a problem with dripping into the hammock or with them stretching or sagging or disintegrating in any way in the rain. I also use, as you can see here, I've got the toggle style knot, easy to put. You can put it anywhere on the strap, so you've got infinite adjustability on your tree strap. And I just use the titanium toggles that Dutch sells because they're pretty expensive. They're very light and they're super strong. But as always, as you'll hear if you talk to anybody who uses this kind of knot, put your whoopee sling or whatever your suspension is for your hammock on the knot, not on the toggle. Put it out here. It doesn't matter how strong it is, you're going to stress that to the point of breakage more than likely. So make sure that your whoopee sling or whatever goes on the knot. It's on the strap, it's not on the toggle. All right. I forgot to mention that knot is called a marlin spike. And the spike obviously comes from the toggle or the spike you're going to put into it. And you can use a stick, a twig, anything that's decently sturdy out in the woods you can put in there. And all it does is hold the knot in place so that when you're done, you pull that toggle out and that knot just falls out of the strap or whatever you got it hooked in. I use the same thing on my pull-outs, on my stakes. Use the same marlin spike. I just use the stake as the spike. So when I pull that stake out, that knot just falls right out. While we're looking at the pull-outs, they're very simple design. Use a mitten hook on the end, and then on the pull-outs you'll see that I've actually sewn the piece of material, the grosgrain, right between the interior and exterior of the double layer hammock so that it just kind of disappears. It's not flapping on the inside or outside. It's actually sandwiched between those two layers of fabric. Very sturdy, very stealth, and without any hardware there. When I take this mitten hook off and wad all this back up into the storage bag, there's no plastic or hard pieces that are going to rub and abrade either the bug net or the fabric. So once that's off, I just hank all of that up and I throw it inside the hammock, and that's where it lives. So there's nothing here that's actually going to continue to abrade or wear out. It's just the grosgrain here, so it's all soft materials on each other. Just something to keep in mind. You'll see that I use some shock cord, and the shock cord I use is reflective, just so I can find it quickly, and then it's connected down here to a piece of Reflect-It from Dutch, which is a reflective Amsteel style or hollow material, but he calls it Reflect-It, and it works really well for that material. So I'm going to do this one-handed. You can see zippers work really smooth. I'm going to zip this end up to the end here. I'm going to take the other end, zip it all the way around. I said I was going to do that, so I had a little trouble getting it over the ridgeline, so I stopped for a minute. But I'm going to zip this bug net all the way up to this end. You'll notice that I have used the Reflect-It for my zipper pull-outs. Just knotted it through there like that. Got a short end on the inside, on the outside, and then a longer end on the inside, so I can pull it while laying down. I can reach it from either side. So now I've got all my bug net tied up, and I'm going to show you what's inside here. Is a storage bag. So that storage bag is what you saw hooked up here with the little mitten hook. That storage bag just lives inside the hammock, and that's where I put the bug net when I don't want it. So you can see once I have the bug net off, it doesn't interfere. I still have my ridge line, still up there, and here's my open hammock now. And all that bug netting is kept in that storage bag that just lives there in the peak of the hammock there. And when I have the bug net out, when I've got it deployed, this bag is a handy little peak storage bag. It just lives down there, and I can disconnect it up here, and then it can just live up here on my ridgeline somewhere. Now, I've made an upgrade to the other hammock I'm going to show you here in a minute, but this one is only connected by that mitten hook. So when it's not in use and it's disconnected from the ridgeline, it just lives down here as a bag, or I can hook that end to the ridgeline, and it'll just hang down here off the ridgeline. So, but like I said, I made an upgrade to the next hammock that we're going to look at. But this is what that looks like. Really handy, very versatile hammock. Now, I wouldn't call it an ultralight. It's probably considered a lightweight since I'm using the 1.0 Robic, but since I've doubled it up, it's obviously a very sturdy, very durable hammock, but it's not an ultralight because of that, because I'm double layering it. But really, the reason I double layer is so that I have a really pretty hammock and can throw a couple of colors in there. And then you'll notice here that the zipper, when it gets to this tie-in, it actually separates from the interior material so that I can actually slide a sleeping pad or clothes or some sort of thermal barrier that I want to use, Reflectix or something, in between those two layers. And you'll see that it's the same way on this opposite end on the other side. So it opens on both sides just like that, so that I have access between those two fabric materials to put some sort of thermal barrier, and that makes it sandwiched between the two layers of fabric and much easier to keep it in place. A lot of times what you'll see is when people are using a sleeping pad or something in a hammock is it moves around a lot, but when you put it between two layers of material, it'll stay in place a whole lot better. So here's the next hammock I built. This is actually my hammock. Used a different material in here because the Robic wasn't available, but still from Ripstop by the Roll. This is his new Mountain series material, which is a very pretty material. It seems a lot sturdier. This is the 1.3 ounce Mountain series, so it's a little heavier duty already, but very pretty. You can see it's the same color on the exterior as the Robic is over there, so they match up. And then I used a different blue material on the inside. You also notice that my bug net is not black. This was something that they offered. This is, I think it's a green or a tan. I think it's like a forest color. You can go to Ripstop by the Roll and find out. But I actually liked it. I like it a lot. I think it kind of disappears a little better than the black does. But that's a difference there that I have. Again, this one is similar to the Jellyfish. Very similar to the way she does it. Another double layer hammock, because that's the way I like to build them. And this one has Dutch's patented zippers. If you're familiar with his Chameleon hammock, these are the zippers he uses on the Chameleon, which are reversible. That means that this bug net actually comes completely off from this hammock, giving me a little extra option. Another difference you're going to see from the other hammock I just showed you is, instead of using mitten hooks, I use these adjustable, I forget what they're called, these adjustable line lockers. I think it's a line locker 3 or a line locker 2, which gives me the ability to pull to adjust this shock cord within it. And this shock cord is reflective and glow in the dark to make it a little even easier to find at night. But again, I used the grow grain that is just trapped between the two layers of fabric and reinforced in there. But with this kind of hook, it still hooks on, so I can still just quickly remove it like that. But I can, once it's hooked up, I can adjust this. If it loosens or the ground gets soft and my stake moves, I can just adjust it from up here if I want to, which is really handy. Again, I use the Reflectix material for the interior and exterior, and again, short pulls on the outside, longer pulls on the inside. So I'm going to set this back up on the tripod and show you how this bug net removes, because that's one of the biggest changes I made to this hammock, is actually using Dutch's zippers so that this can be completely separated and left at home if I don't need it, which actually lightens my load. So let me set that up real quick. So now I'm going to take this bug net completely off the hammock and show you how these zippers work. And that's how easy it is to take that bug net completely off the hammock. And all I'm left with is half the zipper. And so that's a really handy process. I can leave this at home, don't have to worry about that weight, or even if I'm at camp and just don't want it on there, if it's in my face or something, I can completely remove it. And then I have a storage bag that I've designed and built and put in the hammock that I can throw this in real quick. Show you that now. So now you can see I've put that bug net in my storage bag that's up in the peak, just like in the other hammock. Now something I did differently with this one, I'm going to show you real quick, is again I've got a little mitten hook that this is connected with. But if I remove that, you can see I've sewn in a tab in this storage bag so that I can rehook this mitten hook up on my line. And now I have a storage bag that I can put anywhere up on the hammock. And when the bug net's not in there, that's a really handy and perfect size little storage ridgeline organizer. Instead of having, you've seen probably a lot that are made out of the bug net mesh material, but since I'm using this for keeping my bug net in, so when I take that out, what I'm left with is a nice little storage bag that I can throw headlamp, wallet, phone, stuff in there, and then cinch down. So that gives this a little more versatility. Instead of it having to live up in the peak of the hammock there, now with that, just adding that one little piece of grosgrain, now I've got a bag that I can put anywhere I want. So again, just another development for having built these and seeing what I liked and what I'd like to adjust on them and making those adjustments on the next iteration. So okay, so since this bug net removes completely, what you're left with is just half of that zipper that Dutch developed. You'll see that the end caps are completely separated. I still use them so that I have some coverage over that bug net to give me a seal when the bug net's on there. So I still use the end caps, but I'll show you on the other one. On the other one, what you'll see is that the zipper is actually attached to a piece of grosgrain that is sewn to the inside of that end cap. And you'll notice that just because I'm all about the looks, with the end cap, it's also double layered. Doesn't have to be, but I like the looks where you have a clean seam on the outside here instead of having just a rolled seam on it. You've got just a one disappearing hidden seam in there, and then the grosgrain is sewn to the interior piece, and that's what the zipper rides on. But on the new developed one, there's none of that. I still use the double layer end cap, but I don't need the grosgrain in there because these zippers are two separate pieces. So you can see up there when they go up together, they just separate, and that's so you've got a zipper on both sides, which is nice because it also gives you two options. I can get in or out on either side at any time because I'm actually working with two different zippers on either side. So now I'm going to set this back up on the tripod and show you how quickly and easily this bug net goes back on. So there you go. You can see how quickly I was able to put that bug net back on, and I didn't have to worry about figuring out which side was the head and which side was the foot, because these zippers, one of the big deals about these zippers that Dutch has put together and patented is that they can go on either way. They're not kind of matched to one another. They can be even reversed. I could have put this on upside down if I wanted to. Now, I didn't do that because I know which side my seam is on my bug net, but I could if I wanted to. If I wanted to flip this thing all the way over, the zipper would be totally fine with that. but I don't have to worry about head or foot. I can quickly put that bug net back on and be back under my protection. Like I said, you can see how that bug net runs up in there, and that end cap just covers it up and gets me a good seal on there. So that's my 2 hammocks. I'm going to set up this tripod and have a little sit down in the hammock here, and we'll talk about DIY and kind of my thoughts on that. So that's a couple of the hammocks that I've put together. Had a really good time doing it. It was a very fulfilling project because obviously I had some new camping gear that I was building that I could use out in the woods, and anything that reminds me that I can get out in the woods or go do some backpacking is always something that I enjoy. But let me give you a few insights on DIY, just my thoughts. You're going to hear from different people and you can do a lot of research. I do highly recommend you go to hammockforums.net. There's an entire subcategory of the forums that's just focused on DIY, and there's a ton of people with a lot more experience than I have on there that can answer just any question about fabric choices, patterns, designs, technologies that you can consider. It was a huge help to me when I got into it. So I highly recommend hammockforums.net. But since you found my video here, I did want to give you a few ideas or a few things to consider if you want to do a DIY project. So a lot of people think they'll go to cottage vendors like War Bonnet Outdoors or Dutch Wear or Dream Hammocks or any of them, you name it, whatever one you may have researched, and look at the cost of their hammocks and go, gosh, for a hammock, you're talking tent money. You're getting into $120, $150, $180 for a hammock. Now that hammock is well built and has a lot of features to it that you may want, but you start thinking, well, gosh, can I build one for cheaper and save that money? Because they don't seem that complicated. So let me give you a couple of my thoughts on that. First, if you're doing a DIY hammock project just to save money, that's an option. Now you're going to have to consider your time to research and to put together a plan and pattern, to learn how to sew if you've never sewn anything before. This material is not the easiest stuff in the world to sew. Ripstop material is probably one of the more difficult things that you're ever going to have to deal with with a sewing machine, because it's slick, it's lightweight, it's easy to damage, it's easy to pull. So you're going to have to learn how to do that, how to do it properly. But you can save money, but you're not going to save a ton of money. And I would say that once you start comparing apples to apples, like if you wanted to build a blackbird hammock or a sparrow hammock or a chameleon hammock, if you wanted to have all the features that those hammocks have in them, you're going to spend about as much money just on materials and time to get something that is comparable to that. You're going to spend about the same money as you would spend just buying a chameleon hammock. Trust me, I've looked and I've kind of run the numbers. Just what Dutch is doing is he is giving you a ton of product for what he's charging you for that hammock. It's an amazing deal, and then you're also dealing with the fact if you build it yourself, there is no warranty, there is no support, there's no service. I mean, you built it, so you're going to have to deal with it if something's wrong in it. Whereas any of the cottage vendors that I just named, or any of the ones that you've probably have heard of, they go out of their way to make sure that their customers are happy. They provide service with that product that you just aren't going to have if you build it yourself. If you build it yourself, you're kind of stuck with it. If you make a mistake in your cuts or your patterning or your sewing, that's your problem. I know that sounds harsh, but that's just the way it is. Now, if you buy a chameleon or a blackbird or any of those hammocks and there's an issue with it, you just make a call or send an email and they're more than likely going to take care of it for you. So don't consider DIY as an economic option, especially if you're going to get into an apples to apples kind of thing, because you're missing out on a lot of questions that you're going to have to just own as far as quality and durability and stuff. If you build it, like I said, it's yours. It's your problem. So another thing to consider is why would you want to do a DIY hammock when there are so many great cottage vendors that you might want to support? And I'll tell you, I own a Blackbird XLC, I own a Chameleon, I own a lot of those cottage vendor hammers because I want to support those guys. They're doing great work, especially when they're innovating in ways that then they allow that to benefit us DIY people. You know, like I said, Dutch didn't have to patent this zipper and then make it available to DIY people. That's a huge deal, that he made this really unique product that helps me build a better hammock, knowing that that's one more Chameleon he may not be selling. I mean, obviously I bought a Chameleon because I like Dutch and I like what he's doing, but he makes that available to the DIY community so that we can build the next cool things that we want to see as a community. You know, the hammock community is very close and we're very open about these kind of things, and we want to see innovations in technology. So he makes those kind of products available. So that's a cool thing that you'll see in the community. Now, why do I DIY? The main reason that I DIY is because I'm a tinkerer by nature. I like having my hobbies align with one another, and there's just a sense of satisfaction of going and setting something up in the woods, you know, that you built. You know, part of why we do backpacking and bushcraft and all of these kind of things is to show our independence, to free ourselves from the world around us, to kind of get away. And it's just one more way that I can show that I have the ability to kind of separate and not depend on society. And I know that sounds silly, but there is that sense of satisfaction that I am depending on gear that I built, that I designed, that I developed, and that I built. So everything that is out there with me is stuff that I'm depending on my own abilities to do. So there's that sense of satisfaction, and it's addictive. You know, you start building hammocks, and now I've built tarps and I've built storage bags, and I'm always looking at ways to tinker with, and it kind of frees you up of, you know, I love all those cottage vendor hammocks that I have, and then I look at them like, but I would do this, and you know, how would that change the hammock? How would it change the way it lays? How would it change the conveniences that it has in it? So it's a way to exercise that creativity within your inventorying as well. So I do recommend it, but it's not for everybody. Like I said, it's frustrating at times, and sometimes you'll spend all the money to get the fabrics you want, and then you'll ruin the fabric. You'll have a seam that pulls, and you'll tear out a critical part of the hammock, and there's nothing you can do for it at that point except start over and learn your lesson. Now, if you're not up for that challenge, or if you're thinking that the only reason you want to do DIY is to save a little money, then I would do a lot of research, and I would talk to a lot of people before you go down that route, because there are a lot of great options of good quality gear that would be cheaper than building it yourself. Trust me. Because it's going to take you, I mean, a hammock like this is going to take you, you know, your first time 6 to 8 hours to put together, you know, and that's figuring out how to cut the big net so it lays properly on the hammock and all those kind of things. Now, your time is worthwhile too, because that's time you're not outside. So that's something to consider too. But I love DIY. I love the DIY community. Like I said, you know, there are people that have inspired me even in these projects. I love what Jellyfish has been doing. You know, Kyle and the Ripstop by the Roll team, they give me the ability to get great materials to build these things out of. Dutch and his hardware and his cordage and stuff that he makes available, these amazing zippers. I mean, I just enjoy that part of the process of using equipment that other people have built to build something that's solely mine. That you're not going to be able to buy this hammock. This is Fuji Billy's hammock, and then to tinker with those. So, hope that was helpful. Hope you liked seeing a couple of hammocks that I did and hearing a little about my story on DIY. Hope it's been useful. If so, you know, hit the like buttons, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear kind of what your questions are and what you're looking for. But again, first and foremost, I would get you over to hammockforums.net. Great community. It's free to join, and people are very eager to help each other out. So I hope you like that. See you in the next video.